At the start of this conflict, attacks like this from Ukraine were practically unthinkable. It seemed like the tech just wasn't there. But over the last couple of years, the Ukrainian military has leveled up so much that for everyday Russians, the war is no longer just a distant TV broadcast from the borderlands. Just look at Tuapse. It's a Black Sea resort town, situated deep behind enemy lines. Yet right now, it's choking on thick black soot, literally drowning in burning oil. The local oil refinery isn't just some random facility on the outskirts of town. We're talking about a colossal industrial giant the size of half the city, squeezed right up against residential neighborhoods and a major seaport. It's a crucial export hub. And over the past 2 weeks, this untouchable behemoth has turned into the ultimate sitting duck. 3 massive Ukrainian drone strikes in a row. Storage tanks are blowing up one after another. Rivers of blazing fuel are spilling into the streets, and a black, oily rain is falling on the city. But what looks like a localized environmental apocalypse actually holds a much bigger global significance. This isn't just about environmental destruction. It's a surgical strike aimed directly at the lifeblood of the Russian war machine. Those thick pillars of black smoke over the Black Sea send one clear message. The concept of a safe haven deep in the rear is dead. A swarm of cheap drones, costing maybe a few tens of thousands of dollars, is slipping right through the multi-layered air defenses of a massive nuclear superpower.
They reach their targets and systematically incinerate refinement towers worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Equipment that, thanks to Western sanctions, will be a nightmare to replace. A burning Tuapse is the perfect example of how the underdog can leverage new tech to inflict catastrophic macroeconomic damage. Stick around, because in this video, we're going to break down exactly how the Ukrainians are flipping the script on this entire war right now. Seriously, just look at the numbers. In 2024, Ukraine churned out around 2 million drones. In 2025, 4 million. And this year, they're on track to hit a staggering 7 million units. We're looking at figures that practically double year over year. And this isn't just some flex on a spreadsheet. It's a reality that is actively shifting the battlefield. Believe it or not, for the first time since the full-scale invasion began, Ukraine has actually overtaken Russia in the sheer volume of long-range kamikaze drones launched. And that's not just Kyiv blowing smoke. Those are the official numbers coming straight from the Russian Ministry of Defense. In March alone, they reported intercepting 7,347 Ukrainian UAVs. Keep in mind, those are just the ones Russian radars managed to catch. The actual number of birds in the air was undoubtedly higher. During that exact same window, the massive war machine that is Russia only managed to launch 6,462 drones at Ukraine. To me, that is a monumental milestone, and we are already watching the explosive results of this new supremacy play out across the front lines and deep behind enemy lines.
I know what you're probably thinking. How is this even possible? How does a country with a battered energy grid, relying heavily on Western financial aid, outproduce a nuclear-armed neighbor that's cranking out Shahed drones on giant 24/7 assembly lines? The answer comes down to a fundamental clash in strategy. Russia is fighting using a 20th century playbook, building massive, sluggish megafactories that stick out like a sore thumb on satellite imagery. Ukraine, on the other hand, has basically transformed its military-industrial complex into a massive, decentralized IT startup. We're talking about hundreds of private R&D labs, rogue engineering teams, and assembly lines hidden away in basements and garages. As it turns out, this kind of distributed network isn't just faster and more agile. It's vastly smarter than a traditional, top-heavy state corporation. But the story goes way beyond just the sheer volume of plastic and electric motors. We are witnessing a quiet technological revolution happen right before our eyes. Even a year ago, the rules of engagement were pretty straightforward. A Ukrainian drone would fly toward its target using GPS. As it closed in, a Russian electronic warfare system would throw up a jamming field. The drone would lose its satellite link, go blind, and crash into an empty field. So, the Ukrainians pivoted to the one tech buzzword you can't escape right now: artificial intelligence. They started mass equipping their fleet with machine vision. Today's state-of-the-art drone doesn't rely on a pilot's joystick anymore. In fact, it doesn't need a signal at all during its final attack run. As it approaches the target, it goes totally dark, slipping into strict radio silence. It fires up an onboard camera and starts scanning the terrain below in real time. The onboard computer instantly cross-references exactly what the camera sees against a high-res 3D map,
preloaded into its brain. This is an absolute game changer. You can span the airwaves with all the static you want, power up the most expensive electronic jammers on the planet. This drone literally could not care less. It flies fully autonomously, navigates by sight, pinpoints the single most expensive and vulnerable distillation column on a massive refinery, and delivers a surgical strike right on the money. When your adversary gets their hands on a weapon like that, your greatest point of pride suddenly morphs into your biggest liability. Historically, Russia has always been saved by its sheer, unfathomable size. In past wars, they would just pack up their vital factories and move them east of the Ural Mountains, way out of range of any enemy bomber. Out there, totally untouchable, they could sip hot tea and casually churn out tanks and fighter jets. But those old-school playbooks belong in a museum. In the era of autonomous kamikaze drones, having a geographically massive country has suddenly become a fatal vulnerability. You just can't cheat the laws of physics and economics. It is practically impossible to stretch an air defense iron dome over 1/7 of the Earth's landmass. No military on the planet, even if you pooled the resources of every single NATO country tomorrow, has enough surface-to-air missiles to pull that off.
Now, let's do some quick math, because a war of attrition is essentially just a battle of bank accounts. Slapping together a long-range Ukrainian drone costs roughly $50,000 to $100,000. Sounds like a pretty penny, right? But then look at the price tag of the Russian anti-aircraft missile required to swat it out of the sky. A single shot from an S-400 or a modern Pantsir system can easily run anywhere from $500,000 to several $1,000,000. That means just to play defense, Russia is forced to burn through 10 to 20 times more cash than Ukraine spends on the offense. And that's just the cost of a successful interception. What happens if the drone slips through? It turns a multi-$100 million oil refinery into a bonfire. It's a complete financial knockout. Ukraine understands this brutal arithmetic perfectly. That's why they've shifted to swarm tactics. They aren't sending over 1 or 2 rogue UAVs anymore. They are throwing dozens of them at strategic targets simultaneously. The first wave usually consists of dirt-cheap decoys, sometimes flying without a payload at all. Their only job is to bait the Russian air defenses into lighting up their radars, dumping their insanely expensive ammo, and running completely dry. Once the defenders are reloading, the second wave cruises right in and blows up the now defenseless fuel depots. Now, you're probably asking the logical question. Wait, Russia is a massive country with endless resources and running defense factories. Why can't they just pump out more air defense systems to plug these gaps? Well, reality hits hard here too. You can assemble an attack drone out of carbon fiber, an off-the-shelf camera, and an electric motor in a basement over a weekend. But a modern air defense system, like a Pantsir or an S-400, that's not just a fancy truck with missiles bolted on. It is a bespoke masterpiece of military engineering. It requires incredibly complex radar stations, hyper-precise optics, and critically, a mountain of advanced microelectronics. And it's exactly those microchips that have been crippled by Western sanctions. Sourcing military-grade silicon through black market shadow channels is painfully slow, insanely expensive, and ridiculously complicated. You can't just slam your fist on a desk and order a factory to whip up 100 new Pantsir systems by next week. Assembling and calibrating just one of those rigs takes months. Russia is physically incapable of forging its heavy, ultra-expensive shield at the same speed Ukraine is stamping out its cheap plastic swords. As a result, the Russian military command has been backed into a completely unsolvable dilemma. What's the play here? If you keep your air defenses parked on the front line to protect your troops, your multi-billion-dollar refineries in the rear will burn to the ground, stripping the army of both its fuel and its funding. But if you pull those systems back to babysit oil depots in the Urals, Ukrainian aviation and artillery will absolutely decimate your guys in the trenches. The defensive net has been stretched to the breaking point across this massive geography. And faced with this impossible balancing act, the Kremlin made a call that perfectly exposes their true priorities.
It's a decision that should send shivers down the spine of the average Russian citizen. In a crisis like this, the powers that be will always prioritize protecting the most valuable assets. Case in point, Vladimir Putin's personal secluded residence in Valdai. Right now, it is ringed by a staggering 27 giant air defense towers. And the kicker? 7 of those were panic-built just this past March. That tells you the Russian government has exactly zero illusions about the threat level. Just to put the sheer absurdity of this into perspective, 27 modern anti-aircraft systems, we're mostly talking Pantsers and S-400s, make up a ridiculously massive military grouping. Normally, just 1 or 2 Pantsers are more than enough to lock down an entire military airbase or a sprawling oil refinery. An arsenal of this size could provide a layered, ironclad defense for a major metropolitan city like Yekaterinburg or Novosibirsk. Yet, instead of deploying this impenetrable wall to shield strategic cash cows like the Tuapse refinery, which pump billions into the national budget and are currently going up in flames on a weekly basis, the elite are hoarding these scarce resources in the woods of Novgorod. The system has made its choice. When it's physically impossible to defend the entire country, the ruling class just builds an iron dome over themselves. Bottom line, what we are seeing right now is just the tip of the iceberg. Ukraine's grand strategy in this drone war isn't just about stirring up panic. It's about the methodical bleeding out of the Russian economy.
By knocking out multi-billion-dollar oil refineries one by one, they are striking where it hurts the most, the primary wallet bankrolling this entire invasion. And considering the insane production rates and the flawless integration of AI we've talked about today, these surgical strikes are only going to ramp up. The concept of a safe rear is gone, and with every passing month, the financial hemorrhage from these attacks will only get worse. But I want to hear from you. Do you think this massive, lumbering system can actually find an antidote to the smart swarm? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read all of them. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on future deep dives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.